Welcome back to the deep dive. We are continuing a conversation that we know resonates so deeply with so many of you. It's that ongoing dialogue about cultural belonging, about the invisible maps we all carry inside us.
And really the necessary work of building bridges between worlds that, frankly, desperately need to connect right now.
They really do. And today's deep dive, it takes us right to the heart of that theme. We're focusing on a single, really powerful element from our source material's author.
The name.
The name. We're confronting that question he gets asked all the time. Why carry a Chinese name?
Why is China so central? Not just your personal history, but, I mean, it's baked into the very structure and mission of your work.
Exactly. We're zeroing in on the massive, almost monumental emotional weight that is carried by the name, Ling Ting.
And for someone who operates so distinctly and, so successfully between East and West, this name, it's often seen as one of two things, right?
Right. It's either a calculated choice
A branding decision.
or maybe just a poetic flourish. Something that sounds good. But the author's response, what we've drawn from the sources, it just fundamentally reframes that entire idea.
It really does. I mean, the world is so accustomed to treating identity as a commodity or a choice.
Yeah.
A brand you select for yourself.
Sure.
But the material we're looking at, it just immediately rejects that. It pushes back on that whole superficial framing.
So it wasn't something he just picked.
Not at all. It was an internal transformation, a journey of authenticity.
Right.
As the author states, and this is the key phrase for me, the name grew into me slowly.
Grew into me. That's such a different energy.
It completely is.
Yeah.
It suggests less of a strategic decision and much more of an internal alignment, a fulfillment of a potential that was maybe hidden.
That distinction is just incredibly powerful. The move from, say, an external selection to this internal organic growth.
Yeah.
It implies a kind of inevitability, doesn't it? Like a key finding the lock, it was always meant to open.
Precisely. And that's our mission today. We want to unpack this profound concept of belonging twice.
And to really understand how a name, just these three characters, can become a structural, functioning bridge. One that supports two vast and, let's be honest, sometimes mutually challenging emotional and professional landscapes.
And we really have to begin with the most arresting insight from the text. The author claims this name holds something truer than the passport.
Wow.
That sentence alone, I think it encapsulates our entire mission for this deep dive.
Truer than the passport.
It suggests that the core identity, the deepest reality of the self, it transcends all the official bureaucratic documents we rely on.
And instead it resides in personal truth, in lived experience, in that internal, acknowledged connection.
Exactly.
Okay, let's unpack this. The rejection of that surface-level analysis and really the embrace of something more like destiny. This is part one. Beyond branding the name as destiny.
So when people encounter a prominent figure who embraces a cross-cultural identity like this, especially one rooted so deeply in the East while operating in the West, the questions are, well, they're predictable.
You can almost write the script, can't you? Is it marketing?
Is it aesthetics?
Yeah.
Is this just a performance of identity?
Right. Something designed to make you stand out in a crowded, globalized market.
And, these are fair questions, I think. In a transactional world where every decision seems to be filtered through that lens of brand optimization.
We're just conditioned to look for the angle. What's the play here?
But the source material, it pushes back so firmly. It states very clearly that Schuett was not selected for any of those external reasons. It was never about presentation or branding, not at all.
So what was it about then? What is the deep truth, as he puts it?
The deep truth, as he presents it, is that the name wasn't chosen. It had been, and this is another quote, waiting for the right moment.
Waiting for the right moment.
And to really appreciate the weight of that statement, I think we have to break down the semantic architecture of the name itself. This is something the initial transcript didn't cover, but it's absolutely critical to understanding this idea of destiny.
Absolutely. The characters in the name, they aren't random at all. They're infused with a meaning that perfectly mirrors the author's mission and, well, his personality.
Precisely. So let's actually look at the three characters.
Yeah.
Long, Ling, Ting.
Okay, so let's start with the surname, Long.
Right. Long. This is the dragon. And this is so important because the dragon in Chinese culture is vastly different from the Western interpretation.
Hugely different. In the West, it's a monster to be slain. St. George and the Dragon, it's chaos.
Exactly. It's something to be conquered. But in China, the dragon is a symbol of imperial power, benevolent authority, nobility.
In profound spiritual energy, right? The
Yeah.
concept of qi.
Yes, very much so. It's associated with water, with rain, with change and transformation. So to carry as a surname, especially in professional contexts like his, is to anchor yourself in history, in strength, and in this dynamic, transformative potential.
It's not a casual choice then, not by a long shot. It implies a deep connection to the currents of history and the cyclical nature of power itself.
That alone tells you this is not just branding. You don't casually invoke a foundational cultural archetype like the dragon.
Okay, so that's the foundation. What about the given name?
Then we move to the given name, starting with Ling.
Ling.
This character, it translates to soaring or towering or approaching from above. It evokes a sense of elevation, of perspective, aspiration.
So not just physical height.
No, not at all. It suggests someone who looks beyond the immediate horizon, someone who takes the long, high view, which is, you have to admit, the perfect trait for a bridge builder who has to understand two distant shores at the same time.
Right. You need that altitude in your perspective to see both sides clearly.
That's a great way to put it, altitude in perspective. So we have the foundational power of the dragon, and now it's combined with this intellectual and aspirational altitude of soaring.
That's already an incredibly dynamic combination, power and vision.
And then the final character, which provides the emotional anchor for it all, is Ting.
Ting.
This means sudden thunder or awe. But again, the context is key. Thunder here isn't chaos. It's not destructive. It's an immediate, undeniable force of nature.
Okay.
It's often associated with clarity and decisive action. It's that moment when a situation just breaks open and everything becomes clear. It lends the name an energy of impact, of inescapable presence.
So it balances the high perspective of Ling.
Exactly. It balances the high perspective with a very grounded, powerful realization. It brings the vision down to earth with a clap of thunder. Impact.
So when you put all three of them together, dragon, soaring, thunder, it paints a picture that is so far removed from corporate branding, it's not even in the same universe.
It's an ancient, mythological, and deeply personal mission statement.
It implies that the internal reality, this combination of power, vision, and impact, it actually demanded this specific linguistic container. The name had to be this.
And that leads us directly into the author's experience in China. This is where the name's internal destiny was validated externally.
Through what he calls China's gentle recognition.
Yes. And typically, when an outsider adopts such a specific cultural identity, they would face scrutiny, skepticism, intense curiosity about their motives.
Sure, people would be asking why? What are you trying to prove?
But the author notes the complete opposite. He says China engaged him not with curiosity or suspicion, which is sadly often the default in today's strained cross-cultural interactions.
Instead, he was met with gentle recognition.
Think about the psychology of that phrase, gentle recognition. It suggests an instant familiarity, a cultural acceptance that wasn't earned through, years of painstaking assimilation, but was simply given.
Like a homecoming.
It's as if the culture, the entire collective unconscious, just bypassed the need for any explanation. The culture, he says, understood something about me long before I dared to understand it myself.
That has to be an immense feeling of validation. Just immense. To be seen by a vast culture, not as a foreigner trying to fit in, but as someone who simply is.
It means the Chinese context provided the right mirror for his internal self. A mirror that maybe the West, with its different value systems and priorities, just couldn't provide.
And this recognition, it seems it acted as a catalyst for what he calls the revelation of loss.
A huge one. The author didn't journey to China hunting for a new self or trying to invent one. He says he arrived as someone who didn't know he had lost parts of himself along the way.
And that completely shifts the narrative. It's not a quest for self-improvement. It's an unexpected journey of self-recovery.
It is. So the question becomes, what are those lost parts? And this is where we can bring in some external psychological analysis. Western individualism, for all its strengths, often requires suppressing attributes that are deemed, say, inefficient or non-competitive.
Things like vulnerability or deep relational dependence, a slower, more reflective rhythm of life, maybe?
Exactly. We can look at this through the lens of integration theory. Those lost parts are often what someone like Carl Jung might call the shadow, the rejected or underdeveloped aspects of the personality.
And China, being a high-context collectivist society that values history and deep relational trust, what they call guangxi, It offered a different kind of ecosystem.
An ecosystem where those inefficient qualities, like patience or loyalty, beyond just transactional utility or emotional complexity, they could be reclaimed. They could be integrated back into the whole self.
And the source material speaks to the tactile nature of this recovery. It wasn't an abstract idea. It was the people, the intimate late-night conversations.
The places, the streets that seem to remember. It suggests that China offered those lost pieces back not through some single dramatic event,
But through a constant nurturing environment, a slow, steady drip of recognition and acceptance.
The realization, then, is that wholeness for him required this dual perspective. The Western self provided the drive, the ambition, the structure, but the Chinese context provided the depth and the soul.
So it sounds less like the author adopted a Chinese identity.
And more like the Chinese identity recognized and adopted the latent potential within him. It nurtured it back into being.
And this fundamentally rooted connection, rooted in the very meaning of Shomes, is why the name is so much more than a label.
It's a certificate of recovery.
That idea of recovery and integration, it provides the perfect segue into part two, the architecture of belonging carrying a bridge. Because once that recovery takes place, the self is, well, it's structurally altered forever.
Right. The source material analyzes this profound, irreversible shift that happens when a second home truly enters one's life. And the author is very specific here. This is not a substitution.
A second home doesn't replace the first.
No. He says it expands you, stretches you, breaks you open in ways you can't undo.
That phrase, breaks you open, it's intentionally jarring, I think. It's not gentle.
No, it isn't. It suggests that profound cultural integration isn't easy. It involves vulnerability and really a kind of destruction of the old, narrow boundaries of the self.
And once you're stretched like that, you can't simply snap back into the old container. It implies a kind of constant cognitive load.
That cognitive load is the practical reality of dual belonging. It's not just about speaking two languages. It's about bi-belonging.
What does that mean in practice?
It means code switching, not just linguistically, but emotionally and culturally. It means managing two radically different sets of expectations about loyalty, about transparency, hierarchy, communication styles.
It sounds exhausting.
It requires constant conscious effort, and this expansion leads to living simultaneously in two emotional landscapes, two languages, two ways of belonging.
And this complexity then brings us to the core metaphor of this section, the bridge.
Which he's very careful to define. He explicitly rejects the romanticized, poetic idea of a bridge. You know, the one that looks beautiful in a painting but doesn't actually serve a function.
He clarifies that what he carries is a real bridge.
A real bridge. And a real bridge requires steel, concrete, engineering, constant maintenance. It's heavy.
He describes it as one you feel in your bones when the distance gets too loud.
Let's elaborate on that, on what that real bridge maintenance actually entails. Because this is where the depth of the experience really lies. This isn't just about having two addresses or two passports.
No. The real bridge means navigating constant trade-offs.
Right, means managing expectations from colleagues in China who might see you as too Western.
And then managing expectations from those in the West who might find you too Eastern, too opaque.
It means the stress of spanning that chasm, the ideological, the political, the cultural distance. It's internalized. It's felt physically in your bones.
When he says the distance gets too loud, what is he describing?
I think he's describing the internal psychological vibration that happens when those two worlds pull in opposite directions. For the average person, the distance between, say, Beijing and Berlin is just geographical.
Alone on a map.
Exactly. But for someone carrying a real bridge, that distance is an internal dynamic that has to be managed every single day.
Whether that's through managing jet lag or language fatigue.
Or simply reconciling conflicting worldviews within your own decisions, your own mind. It's a constant low-level hum of tension.
And the name serves as the sensory anchor for this massive, heavy internal structure. It's the constant stabilizing force in all of that.
It is. And he provides these incredibly specific examples of the emotional payload the name carries.
These examples, they function like deep mnemonic devices, don't they?
They do. He says it carries rain on rooftops I miss.
Which is such a specific tactile sensory memory. It's not just, I miss the weather. It's the sound of a particular climate on a particular roof tile. It evokes comfort and place. It's hyper-specific nostalgia.
Then he says it carries Voices that made me feel understood without translation.
And that addresses the core of relational belonging. That's the holy grail, isn't it?
It really is. To feel understood without having to justify or explain yourself. That is the ultimate antidote to the structural loneliness that so often accompanies a cross-cultural life.
And the name holds the echo of that empathetic connection.
And then, perhaps the most telling one, it holds the warmth that softened parts of me the West had hardened.
This directly links the cultural environment to internal emotional repair.
It does. If the Western emphasis on, say, hyper-efficiency or competitive individualism created a kind of emotional armor,
Which it often does.
then the warmth of the Chinese context, its focus on community, on relationship, on historical continuity, that served as the therapeutic heat needed to make those hardened parts pliable again.
So if we connect this to the bigger picture, what we're seeing is how a name can transcend just being a mere label and become a condensed living memory archive.
And it's not passive. It's an active portal. Every single time he hears or uses the name, he's triggering those sensory anchors, the specific sounds, the voices, that feeling of warmth.
And he's performing an act of psychological grounding. He's centering himself.
This profound transformation is why the author uses that analogy of identity as a river. Identity, he states, is not a straight line. It's not a predetermined trajectory from A to B.
It's a river with many currents.
And the China experience, for him, fundamentally and irreversibly changed the flow of that river.
And a river, once it carves a new channel, it can't just revert back to the old one. The landscape is permanently changed.
Exactly. The Chinese current, infused with the power, the altitude, and the impact implied by Xi's, has joined and altered the velocity and broadened the banks of his identity forever.
So the dual belonging isn't an intermittent experience, something he dips in and out of.
No, it's a fundamental geological reality of the self. The bridge is built and now the river flows under it perpetually.
That geological reality, carrying a real bridge, managing two massive currents, it must inevitably come with a cost. You can't love two places that deeply without always missing one of them.
Absolutely. And that's what we need to explore in part 3, the cost and blessing of dual belonging.
The cost is indeed this quiet ache that he describes.
The material addresses this internal tension directly. The feeling when thinking of China is described as a break, but he immediately qualifies that. He says, not like a wound, but like a string pulled tight with longing.
That qualification is so vital. A wound implies damage, something that needs to heal and recover.
Right. But a pulled string, that implies tension. But the tension is proof of connection. The string is taut. Because the love is alive, it's strong, and it's spanning a vast distance.
So the tension actually confirms the connection's health, even though it causes discomfort.
That's it, exactly. And this deep structural longing is defined by that specific German term, Heimweh.
Which we often translate pretty blandly as just homesickness.
Yes, but he specifies. It's the kind of Heimweh that belongs to someone who is always a little too far from one of them.
Let's delve deeper into that idea of Heimweh to really appreciate the gravity of the term. It's often contrasted with Fernweh, isn't it?
Right. Fernweh is the ache for far-off places,
Right.
wanderlust. But Fernweh is curable. You just book a ticket and go.
But Heimweh, especially in this context of dual belonging, it's structural. It's not just missing your primary home.
No. It's perpetually existing in a state where your complete self requires both of these geographic and emotional landscapes to be whole.
And knowing you can never inhabit both fully at the same moment.
That's the structural alienation of the dual citizen of the heart. You're always a little bit incomplete.
So because of this structure, the ache isn't temporary. It's the perpetual state of the expanded self.
Which is why he says the longing is the cost of being expanded by love. It's not a design flaw in the system. It's the inevitable tax that's levied by that extraordinary emotional expansion.
To stop longing would mean to stop loving one or the other. You can't have one without the other.
And his description of it is so powerful, so synesthetic. It is a sound you feel more than hear.
Which emphasizes its internal, deeply physical nature. It's not a thought, it's a feeling.
A low-frequency hum beneath the surface of daily life. And that hum confirms that the commitment to both places, East and West, is profoundly real and enduring, no matter the distance.
And yet this constant ache is immediately counterbalanced by the ultimate gain, the blessing of this duality.
The blessing is the knowledge. He says, you know what it means to belong twice.
And that profound understanding of dual allegiance, dual history, dual love, That is the ultimate reward that justifies the structural cost.
And the name, the bridge, it acts as the stabilizing presence through all of this. It keeps both parts of the self alive.
And he says it holds something more honest than the versions of me I had been told to be.
Which brings us right back to that idea of the recovered self. The name guards the authenticity that China helped resurrect. It protects it from cultural pressures that might demand simplification or singular loyalty.
This profound personal experience then translates directly into his external professional mission, the work as bridge building.
Yes. His company carries a Chinese name, not for aesthetics, not for marketing.
But because the work itself is bridge building in the most literal sense, the name dictates the mission.
And that linkage between internal identity and external enterprise is just incredibly potent. The internal reality of feeling like a bridge between two emotional landscapes.
It manifests as the external mission of connecting worlds that do not yet know how much they need each other.
The personal struggle to reconcile duality becomes the professional imperative to foster connection.
And this imperative, he makes clear, is not superficial. It's not just a mission statement on a website.
No. He says his foundation lives on both sides, woven into history, decisions, and loyalties, which means the operational decisions, the hiring choices, the long-term strategy, everything is filtered through this dual lens.
It's the structural integrity of the enterprise, and it echoes the structural integrity of the name Ooze itself.
Here's where it gets really interesting. This duality of pain and gratitude. The longing, the Heimweh, becomes the constant confirmation of love.
Right. The very ache ensures the internal bridge never falls silent.
And that internal vibration, that's what drives the external work of connecting East and West. The cost of love becomes the engine of purpose.
It's a remarkable model for sustainable, mission-driven work that's rooted in a deep, undeniable personal truth.
We can transition now to part 4. The name is a meeting place. This explores the therapeutic, the immediate, and the continuous effect of fully inhabiting this name.
So we've established the name as a container for destiny, for memory, and for purpose. But this section elevates it even further. It describes it as an active, almost spiritual practice of self-regulation and grounding.
The author describes the immediate internal effect of using the full Chinese name. When he articulates the sound, Long Ling Ting, something inside, he says, returns home for a moment.
And that's not just a pleasant recognition. He's describing an instantaneous feeling of alignment, a sudden relief from the constant cognitive fatigue of all that code switching and duality we talked about.
I think of it like hitting the reset button on your internal gyroscope. In a world of constant movement and cross-cultural demands, to have a verbal anchor, a specific, precise sound that immediately recenters you, that has to be invaluable.
The effect is physical and psychological. He says, something softens, something breathes.
And we discussed that warmth softening the parts the West had hardened. When he speaks the name, he's performing an active self-care routine. He's triggering that memory archive of the rain, the voices, the warmth.
And physically returning to the integrated whole self defined by dragon, soaring, and thunder.
This action, this self-designation, leads to the final critical point about the name. It is identity, not a title. He is firm on this. He says, he is not a title. He is where my two worlds meet.
That emphasizes the name as a geographical location, an architectural space of reconciliation.
Yes. It's the precise map coordinate where his Western self, the structure-driven part, and his recovered self, the soulful, relational part, can coexist without conflict.
It can work in collaboration.
Exactly. The name isn't just what he is called. It is the ground he stands upon. It's the successful integration of two vast, complicated cultural matrices.
It's the ultimate expression of that belonging twice principle we started with. The name N isn't a mask, and it isn't merely a reflection of his identity.
It is the active, current manifestation of that integrated identity.
And crucially, this integration is not presented as a finished project, is it?
Not at all. It's an ongoing, continuous process. The author admits he is still learning how to live in that meeting place every day.
Which requires daily effort, balance, intentionality. It requires actively maintaining that real heavy bridge.
And this ongoing work is sustained by his enduring attitude, which he describes as one of gratitude, with longing, with love that doesn't fade.
He accepts the duality. He acknowledges the constant work it requires, and he embraces the structural Heimweh as an essential companion to the profound love he holds for both of his homes.
You know, this raises an important question. How often do we recognize that our names, or the foundational principles and nomenclature we choose for our lives, for our endeavors, are not just static labels.
But are active, dynamic participants in our internal architecture.
That's it. For Ling Ting, his name is the most honest structure he carries. It's the foundation that allows him to function effectively and authentically in two very complex, very demanding worlds.
We've traveled so far beyond that initial surface-level curiosity about a Chinese name.
So far.
We've journeyed into a deep exploration of dual identity, the recovery of a lost self through cultural recognition, and the immense emotional cost and the ultimate blessing of that deep intercultural connection.
We established how the name, with its deep meanings of dragon, soaring, and thunder, became a lifeline. It became a truth that was truer than a passport.
And it allowed two worlds to meet and find a common purpose within one person. And through that person, launch collaboration across entire continents.
The core insight, I think, is that expansion, while it can be painful and structurally demanding, is absolutely essential for reaching one's truest, most integrated potential.
So what does this all mean? I think it means that true belonging often requires embracing complexity. It requires expanding beyond the singular and courageously carrying the weight of two homes simultaneously.
It means recognizing that those moments of quiet ache, that vibration of the real bridge you feel in your bones, are not signs of failure.
They're proof of immense, unfading love.
And the identity that is forged in that meeting place, the one between two cultures, is ultimately more resilient, more insightful, and fundamentally more truthful than the narrow, compartmentalized version one might have been instructed to be.
And for you, our listener, here is a final provocative thought for you to carry forward from all of this. If your identity is a river with many currents, what unexpected current, what new place might change its flow next, demanding a structural shift in who you are?
And crucially, what name, what internal anchor would you need to carry, either spoken or unspoken to, truly honor that powerful transformation?